Tonight on KGW News.
Be careful, that's a gun right there, I think. He just picked it up.
New video and interviews take us through the tragic night when a sheriff's deputy mistakenly killed an off-duty police officer.
I had to stop that person from getting in and hurting those innocent people.
Then, a pilot protest at PDX leads to dozens of canceled flights. What to know if you're flying soon. Plus, the crime caper on the coast that's also a riddle. What looks like $1 million, but isn't worth a cent. Your news starts now.
And we begin tonight with a heartbreaking report into the shooting death of an off-duty Vancouver police officer by a sheriff's deputy. New details, including drone video that begin to shed light on what went wrong. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm David Molko, and you may remember that Clark County Sheriff's deputy said he believed he was shooting a robbery suspect on the run. Instead, he shot and killed Officer Donald Zahoda just steps from his own front door. Let's bring in our Alma McCarty, who's been poring over the full report here. And Alma, this is just utterly tragic on so many levels.
Well, David, it really is. And this subject matter may not be appropriate for all viewers, but we are showing portions of it to better understand how a chaotic situation ended so horribly. And
Law enforcement had eyes on the robbery suspect, identified as Julio Segura.
This person's now running towards the residence there off of 84th.
That home turned out to be Officer Donald Zahoda's. Drone video from overhead shows a confrontation between the off-duty officer and Segura. This as Clark County deputies approach the home.
Okay, you're going to have to run up. It's a little ways up there. They're still fighting.
Video shows one person run inside the home. It's the suspect, but in the dark, deputies don't appear to be able to tell. An SUV pulls up as the other person, who we now know was the off-duty officer, goes back for his gun.
Oh, he's running. Be careful, that's a gun right there, I think. He just picked it up.
A deputy exits the car. We're going to pause the video here, but seconds later, he draws his rifle and fires 4 rounds.
Shots fired.
I saw the flashes. Okay.
As I've seen the video and the report, it's quite clear that they thought that this individual was the person who presented the threat.
Dr. Keith Taylor is a professor at John Jay College of Criminal Justice in New York City. He's followed this case, telling KGW the full release of this investigative report gives the public a better sense of what happened.
I cannot emphasize that enough. It is a severe tragedy, the loss of this officer's life.
It's not long before law enforcement on scene realized the man shot was Zahoda, as the suspect exits the house with his hands above his head.
My name is Julio Segura.
And Segura admits in the recording to stabbing Zahoda.
I panicked, like both of us were in the wrong. I was in the wrong because I approached him in the middle of the night at his own household. So, yeah. I would try to get the suspect on the ground with the gun too.
Also in the report,
this has been very difficult, but I will do my best.
An interview with Deputy Jonathan Feller.
All very fluid, very fast.
Who fired the fatal shots.
So I believed that if that person got in that house, they would kill them. And I had to stop that person from getting in and hurting those innocent people.
The suspect, Segura, faces multiple felony charges, including murder. Prosecutors believe the stab wounds Segura allegedly inflicted on Zahoda during the fight could have ended his life if the deputy's bullets had not. This report will be reviewed by outside prosecutors to determine if the shooting was justified, but at this point, Deputy Feller does not face any charges.
It is difficult to watch, and Alma, tonight our thoughts are with Officer Donald Zahoda's family. Thank you, Alma. Well, let's get you caught up tonight on other headlines. We all know now what caused all the commotion, I should say, in a Gresham neighborhood late last night. We've got clarity. Police were chasing 4 teenagers they say carjacked someone earlier in the day. The suspects, one of who is just 15 years old, were caught near 172nd and Gleason. That is after police say they rammed a patrol car and sped through southeast Portland. Officers say they found 4 guns in the stolen car, including an AR-15. A red alert on the rails starting Saturday as TriMet will suspend Max Red Line service. Crews need to move a section of track. This is near the Gateway Transit Center. So if you need to get to Gateway, you'll need to take the green or blue line. And if you're headed to the airport from there, you'll need to hop on a shuttle bus. The Red Line disruption is going to last a week through April 9th. Okay, let's take you to Newport, where police have quite the caper on their hands. Someone broke into a car and stole $1 million, but hold on, because it happened to be fake. In fact, prop money for movies. We are not making this up. The bills are clearly marked for movie prop use only, though you can see they look pretty real unless you check really close at the top there above the White House. Police are worried the thieves are going to try and pass this money off as real and end up duping local businesses, so look out for that. All right, developing tonight, if you are flying Alaska Airlines anytime soon, you'll want to check and then recheck your flight status. That is because a pilot protest led the airline to cancel 120 flights up and down the West Coast today, and we can expect more this weekend. In fact, a handful Saturday already canceled. So at PDX, pilots stood outside the terminal, what the Pilots Association called an informational picket to push for changes to their contract. They say it's not competitive enough when it comes to attracting and keeping pilots.
The 3 main items are job security, work rules, and flexibility in our schedules.
In a statement, Alaska Airlines said, quote, "A new pilot contract remains a top priority, but we've put a package on the table that is competitive and addresses the issues most important to our pilots." The airline went on to say they are still working to recover over $2 billion in losses from the pandemic. And speaking of pandemic recovery, a new study out of the CDC reveals that many teenagers, even those on the surface who appear to be doing well, are in fact still struggling. As our Catherine Cook reports, it also shows why connecting with teens and listening is more critical now than ever.
In what feels like a clearing in the pandemic, we're seeing just how dark it got for many teens. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention this week released findings from a recent survey. They asked nearly 8,000 high school students to share how they felt in 2020 during the height of lockdown. The survey revealed abuse at home. 55% said they were cursed at or verbally insulted by an adult. More than 1 in 10 teens said they were physically abused, and 66% said they found it difficult to complete their schoolwork.
I would say that the study findings were pretty accurate for what we're seeing.
Amy Baker is a social worker on special assignment in the Beaverton School District. She knows teens are suffering.
And I think sometimes we forget that there's a corresponding science of resilience.
She says school staff members cling to that hope as they work to counter the pandemic's lasting effect on students.
Making sure that we provide as many opportunities as possible for connection, for meaningful relationship with positive adults. It's extremely powerful in mitigating the effects of trauma.
The CDC says it's unclear how significant a role the pandemic played in what the survey found, whether the pandemic was directly related to the abuse or if it had been going on before the lockdown. What is clear is not every teen felt the impacts of the pandemic equally. Take depression. The CDC says 45% of high school students reported feeling persistently sad or hopeless, and 1 in 5 had contemplated suicide. But it goes deeper than that. Of gay, lesbian, and bisexual teens surveyed, nearly half said they'd contemplated suicide. That's compared to 14% of heterosexual teens. And gender showed another disparity. More than 1 in 4 girls contemplated suicide. That's twice the rate of boys.
The statistics have always been alarming, and the pandemic has just exacerbated everything.
Emily Moser heads up the Youth Line program at Lines for Life. While COVID case numbers are dropping and kids are back in school, she says the CDC's findings underline an ongoing crisis.
I think we aren't really good to go right now. It's a bigger conversation now, and it's a conversation for everyone.
Youthline volunteers like Galena Simpson are having that conversation with their peers.
That isolation, it was brutal.
When she talks with teens who are struggling, Galena draws on advice she hopes adults will follow too. She calls it staying in the muck.
Let someone tell their story and to sit in the pain that they're experiencing. and being able to validate that instead of going straight into problem solving. And the answer, I feel like, is so much more simple than people might think it is, but it really is to listen.
And when adults do that, Galena promises it means something to teens. She knows because they tell her.
They talk about that teacher that checked in on them when they saw that they were going through a really difficult time, or the counselor who reached out to them when they didn't even know anyone was paying attention.
In Southwest Portland, Catherine Cook, KGW News.
And our thanks to Catherine for that important story. If you or someone you know is struggling with thoughts of suicide, you can call this number anytime to be connected with mental health counselors. It's 800-273-8255, or to make it easier to remember, that's 800-273-HELP.